His hand closed around her hair like he was grabbing a dish rag. Right there, at the counter, in front of 14 customers and a restaurant full of people who suddenly couldn't look up from their plates. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She went still, the way a woman goes still when she's deciding between survival and war. But in the corner booth, behind tinted glass and a half-finished bourbon, the most dangerous man in New York City just set down his drink. And his eyes said someone in this building is about to learn what a mistake costs. Let me take you back to the beginning. Her name is Zuri, 29 years old, born and raised in Bridgeport, Connecticut. The kind of city where ambition gets you a bus ticket somewhere else if you're lucky, and a double shift at the gas station if you're not. Zuri got lucky. Or rather, Zuri got relentless. She clawed her way into the restaurant industry at 16, bussing tables, running food, washing dishes until her knuckles cracked and bled into the soap water. She learned to cook by watching, learned to serve by surviving, learned to manage people by being the one nobody managed to break. By 29, she was floor manager at Linden and Ash, one of those restaurants in Greenwich, Connecticut, where the appetizers cost more than her first car and the wine list reads like a mortgage statement. The kind of place where senators eat on Tuesdays and hedge fund managers pretend they're not closing deals over dessert. She ran that floor like a general. Every plate timed, every guest handled, every crisis absorbed before anyone at the white cloth tables ever felt a ripple. And the man who owned it all, head chef and proprietor Victor Kessler, hated her for it. Not openly, never openly. Victor was too smart for that. 53 years old, silver hair slicked back, European accent that made cruelty sound like sophistication, 3 Michelin stars, a cookbook that sold 250,000 copies, and an ego so large it needed its own reservation. Victor didn't hate Zuri because she was bad at her job. He hated her because she was the reason the restaurant ran perfectly and everybody who worked there knew it. Every server, every sous chef, every dishwasher who stayed past midnight because Zuri remembered their names and asked about their kids. She was the spine of his empire, and spines don't get credit, they just carry the weight. That Tuesday in November, Victor was in a mood that could curdle milk. A food critic from the New York Times had visited the week before, and the review hadn't dropped yet. Victor had been pacing the kitchen since 4 in the afternoon, snapping at line cooks and sending plates back for invisible imperfections. Zuri was at the front counter, reviewing the evening reservations. Her natural hair pinned up in that professional twist she wore every shift, tight enough for service, loose enough to remind herself she was still herself underneath the uniform. She didn't hear him come up behind her. Victor moved fast when he was angry. He reached across, grabbed a full handful of her hair, and yanked her head back so hard her pen clattered off the counter onto the floor. Turned her face toward his like he was adjusting a lamp. "Table 12's wine pairing is wrong," he said. Just that, like his fist wasn't tangled in her hair, like she was furniture he was repositioning. "You're embarrassing me in my own restaurant." The entire front of the house went silent. 2 servers froze mid-step. A hostess looked away. A couple near the window stared at their breadbasket like it contained the secrets of the universe. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, because Victor Kessler was the name on the building, and in this world, names on buildings get to do whatever they want to the people inside. Zuri's scalp burned. Her eyes watered from the angle of her neck. But her voice came out level, flat, controlled in a way that cost her everything. "Let go of my hair, Victor." He held on for one more second, just long enough to make it clear that letting go was his choice, not her demand. Then he released her, turned, and walked back to the kitchen like nothing had happened. Zuri picked up her pen, straightened her hair, fixed the wine pairing on table 12. And in the corner booth, separated by shadow and glass, Kang Xiaojun placed both hands flat on the table. His bodyguard, sitting across from him, recognized the gesture. He'd seen it once before. the night before the Jang operation in Flushing that made the front page of every paper in Queens. Both hands flat meant someone in this building is about to learn what a mistake costs. If your blood pressure just spiked, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. This story was built for people who feel things deeply, not for people who scroll past. Tales by Wave doesn't do ordinary. Subscribe right now because the moment this man stands up from that booth is the moment Victor Kessler's entire world starts burning, and you do not want to miss how it burns. Zuri made it to the staff bathroom at 11:47 that night, locked the door, sat on the floor, and then her hands started shaking. Not during service, never during service. She gave Victor nothing during service. But alone, in a bathroom that smelled like industrial cleaner, she let the shaking come. She'd been here before, not this bathroom, this feeling, the knowledge that what happened was witnessed and that the witnesses would remember it differently by morning. He tapped her shoulder, that's what they'd say. You know how Victor is. She knew the script. She'd heard it in every room where a black woman's pain was less convenient than a powerful man's comfort. Her phone buzzed. Her mother. Like she had a sensor for damage. "Hey, Mama. You sound tired. Long shift. What happened?" "Nothing I can't handle." She went home, didn't sleep. At 6 in the morning, she started drafting an incident report. Detailed, clinical. Times, witnesses, physical contact described precisely. Emotion gets dismissed. Facts survive. She emailed it to the restaurant's ownership group, a corporate entity in Manhattan she'd never met in person. The response came in 4 hours. "We take these matters seriously. An investigation will be conducted. In the interim, please continue your regular duties." Continue your regular duties. Walk back into the room where a man grabbed your hair and act like nothing shifted. She went to work that night, because rent exists whether dignity does or not. He came back the next evening. Same booth, same bourbon, different energy. Zuri noticed him this time. Korean, mid-30s, face designed to give nothing away. Dark suit that fit like it was sewn while he was standing in it, hands on the table with a stillness that didn't match anything else in the room. She approached his table because it was her job. "Good evening, welcome back to Linden and Ash." He looked at her, not through her, at her, with the full attention of someone who considers looking at a person to be a serious act. "You're the floor manager." "I am." "The service is excellent. That's because of you, not the kitchen." She paused. That was specific and accurate. He came back the next night, and the next, always the same booth, always alone except for the quiet man across from him who never ate and watched the room like it owed him something. By the 4th night, Zuri understood this was not a man who liked the food. On the 5th night, Victor came out of the kitchen. He walked the floor, greeting VIP tables, performing the charm that magazines loved. He passed the corner booth, glanced at Seojin the way rich men size up other rich men. Victor saw a quiet Korean man in a nice suit, filed him under irrelevant. That miscalculation would cost him everything he owned within 60 days. The investigation into Zuri's complaint concluded the following week. The finding? Inconclusive. Insufficient corroborating evidence. The 2 servers who saw everything suddenly couldn't remember clearly. The hostess was no longer employed. The security camera above the counter had experienced a technical malfunction that evening. 14 hours of footage. Gone. Zuri read the email sitting in her car in the parking lot, rain on the windshield, hands steady because she'd trained them to be steady. She called her cousin Imani, paralegal in Hartford. Sharp tongue, sharper mind. Imani listened to the whole thing and said, "They buried it." Yes. "Do you have any other evidence? Witnesses who will actually talk?" "Everyone's scared, Imani. He's the name on the building." "Not the name I'm worried about. Who owns the building itself?" Zuri paused. She'd never thought about it. Victor was the face, the brand, the star. But the actual property, the corporate structure, the money behind the Michelin stars, that was a different question. "I don't know," she said. Find out, because the person who owns the building has more power than the person who cooks in it. And if they're different people, that's your lever. Zuri didn't know it yet, but the answer to that question was sitting in a corner booth 6 nights a week, drinking bourbon and watching her like she was the most important thing in every room she entered. 2 days later, Victor escalated. He cut her hours, moved her to lunch shifts where the tips were half of what dinner brought, reassigned her best servers, started CCing the ownership group on emails about inventory discrepancies that didn't exist, building a paper trail that painted her as incompetent. He was erasing her, not firing her, that would validate her complaint. Instead, he was making her disappear slowly, making the job so unbearable she'd quit on her own. A resignation letter looks cleaner than a termination following a harassment allegation. Zuri recognized the strategy. She'd seen it used on other women. The slow squeeze, the manufactured failure, the institutional gaslighting that turns a victim into a problem employee, one memo at a time. She didn't quit. She documented everything. Every schedule change, every reassignment, every email with a timestamp and a screenshot saved to 3 separate locations. And she kept showing up, every shift, on time, professional, unbroken. What she didn't know was that every move Victor made was being recorded by someone entirely else. Someone with resources that made corporate investigations look like children playing detective. They erased the footage, silenced the witnesses, cut her hours, built a paper trail to destroy her credibility, and she's still standing. If you've ever been the person a system tried to crush because you dared to speak the truth, this story was written for you. Like this video right now. Not because I'm asking, because Zuri deserves to be heard by millions, and the only way that happens is if you refuse to scroll past her. On a Friday night 3 weeks after the incident, Zuri locked the restaurant at midnight. The last server had left at 11:30. The kitchen was dark, the parking lot was empty except for her car, and the particular silence that fills commercial spaces after closing. She was walking to her car when she noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Engine off, lights off, occupied. The faint glow of a phone screen behind tinted windows. She gripped her keys between her fingers. Bridgeport taught her that. Keys between fingers. Walk with purpose, never run. She drove home, checked her mirrors 11 times. The next morning, a package sat on her doorstep. No label. Inside, a USB drive and a handwritten note on plain white paper. The security footage from November 14th was not deleted. It was copied before it was erased. This drive contains the original. 47 seconds, unedited, time-stamped. Below that, "You are not alone in this." Zuri sat on her kitchen floor with the USB drive in her palm. Someone had accessed the restaurant's security system, copied footage the ownership group claimed was lost, delivered it to her home address. This was either the most generous thing a stranger had ever done for her, or the opening move in something she couldn't see the edges of. She plugged in the drive, pressed play. 47 seconds. Crystal clear. Victor's hand in her hair, the yank, her face, every witness frozen in frame. She watched it 3 times. Then she cried. Not from pain, from relief. For 3 weeks, a system had been telling her what happened wasn't what happened. Now she held the truth in her hands. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it, then answered. "Miss Zuri?" The voice was male, low, controlled, an accent she recognized but couldn't place exactly. Korean, layered under something American. "I trust the delivery arrived?" Who is this? Someone who was in the restaurant that night. Her mind flashed to the corner booth, the still man in the dark suit, the one who watched her like the room was built around her. "The footage," she said carefully. "How did you get it?" That's not important. What's important is that the people who erased it thought they were thorough. They weren't. "What do you want?" The pause was long. considered, like he was weighing honesty against strategy and choosing honesty, which for a man like him was the more expensive option. He continued, "There's a lawyer, Kim Dae-won. Her office is in Stamford. Tell her Kang Seo-jun sent you. She'll take the case." Silence. "And if I don't?" "Then the footage is still yours. Use it however you want. Or don't. That choice belongs to you. Everything from here belongs to you." He ended the call. Zuri stared at her phone. Then she did something she wouldn't be able to explain to anyone. She laughed. Short, sharp, disbelieving, because a stranger had just handed her the weapon the system tried to destroy, connected her to legal firepower she couldn't afford, and asked for absolutely nothing in return. That either made him the most dangerous man she'd ever encountered, or the most honest. She suspected he was both. She searched his name, Kang Seo-jun. The legitimate results were thin. Investor, board member, philanthropist, 2 formal photographs that looked released on purpose. Then the gaps. No interviews, no social media, no candid shots. For a man who dined at Michelin restaurants 6 nights a week, he was invisible. She searched deeper: forums, court filings, property records. And then she found it. An article from 3 years ago. A warehouse fire in Flushing. 6 people arrested. All charges dropped. 1 name mentioned in connection. Never charged, never investigated. Kang Seo-jun, known in certain circles as the architect, because he didn't destroy things, he redesigned them. The man who gave her a lawyer was the most powerful criminal in the tri-state area. Her hands were not steady when she dialed Kim Dae-won's number, but she dialed. Dae-won was exactly her reputation. Small Korean woman, early 50s, reading glasses that could cut glass. She took one look at the footage and said, "We don't just win this, we make it so loud they can never do it again." The lawsuit landed on Victor's desk like a bomb. Assault, hostile work environment, retaliation, evidence tampering. Exhibit A, 47 undeniable seconds. But Victor didn't crumble. Men like Victor escalate. He hired a private investigator to dig into Zuri's background, looking for anything to paint her as unstable or opportunistic. The investigator made 3 phone calls before receiving a visit from 2 men in dark suits, who explained, very politely, that continuing this work would be inadvisable for his health and his ability to operate in Connecticut. The investigator dropped the case within the hour. Zuri didn't know any of this. She was doing what she had always done, working her shifts, documenting everything, showing up. What she noticed was this. Things around Victor started breaking. His wine distributor canceled, his loyal sous chef left for Manhattan, the landlord sent notice that the lease wouldn't be renewed. Piece by piece, quietly, like someone was removing the walls of Victor's world 1 brick at a time, so slowly he didn't notice the sky above him until it was open. She saw him again in person on a Wednesday. Dae-won's office, Stamford, glass walls and a view of the harbor. He was already there when she arrived, standing at the window the way she'd noticed powerful men stand at windows, like the view belonged to them. He turned when she walked in, and something happened. A reflex. His body stood straighter before his mind could calculate the optics, like her presence triggered something involuntary. "Missouri," he said. Same voice as the phone. Low, calibrated, a roughness underneath the control, like something unfinished. "Mr. Kang." He gestured to the chair beside him. She chose the one across the table. Something flickered in his expression. If she didn't know better, she'd call it amusement. "Victor hired a private investigator," Dae-won said, cutting straight through pleasantries. "He was looking into your personal history." "Was?" Zuri asked. "He's no longer on the case." Zuri looked at Sejin. He looked back, steady, giving nothing. "You did that," she said. Not a question. The investigator made a professional decision, after someone helped him make it. Sejin held her gaze. I don't control other people's decisions. I clarify their options. The audacity, the absolute architectural audacity of that sentence, and the honesty underneath it. He wasn't pretending to be safe. He was telling her exactly what he was and letting her decide what to do with the information. If they trace the footage back to you, she said, what happens? They won't. If they do. He paused, the kind of pause that carries weight. Then I have a conversation with their lawyers that ends differently than they expect. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have that doesn't make you uncomfortable. She felt it then, the current, the thing that had been building since a corner booth and a glass of bourbon and a pair of eyes that watched her like she was the only real thing in a room full of performance. She looked away, because looking at him too long was starting to feel like standing too close to something warm in winter, dangerous because you don't want to leave. I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Ask. Why me? You eat at restaurants all over the city. You've probably seen 100 terrible things happen to 100 people. Why did you intervene for me? The silence lasted long enough that Daewon quietly excused herself from the room. Sejin's jaw shifted. The thing it did when honesty was more expensive than deflection, but he was choosing to pay anyway. I've seen terrible things happen to people. You're right. Most of the time I feel nothing. That's not an excuse. It's the truth. He stopped. That night, watching him do that to you, I felt something. I still don't have the right word for it, but it hasn't stopped. He looked at her directly. You're the first thing that hasn't stopped in a very long time. He just admitted that she's the first thing he's felt in years, a man who controls an empire, a man who makes cities bend, and she broke through without trying. If that hit you somewhere real, then you already understand what Tales by Wave does. We build stories that live in your chest. Subscribe, not for the algorithm, for yourself. Because the moment she discovers the real reason he was in that restaurant will change everything you think you know about the story. She didn't respond to his confession that afternoon. She nodded, turned back to the paperwork, finished the meeting. But driving home on I-95, she gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles ached. Something in his words had landed in a place she kept locked. She was not a woman who fell for dangerous men. She was practical, disciplined. She'd built her life on the principle that nobody was coming to save her, and that principle had never once failed her. And now, a man had appeared who wasn't trying to save her, who gave her the weapon and the lawyer, and then stood back, who removed obstacles while leaving her the visible agency, who operated in the dark so she could fight in the light. It was the most sophisticated kind of support she'd ever experienced. It terrified her. Over the next 2 weeks, the case accelerated. 2 former employees contacted Daewon, women who'd left Linden and Ash under suspicious circumstances. Their stories formed a pattern. Victor didn't just harass, he dismantled. He used the institution to erase every woman who challenged him. Zuri read their statements sitting at her kitchen table at midnight. Her eyes burned, not for herself, for them, for the years they carried this alone, because no one with enough power cared enough to look. Her phone buzzed. She'd learned to recognize his rhythm, short, precise, never more than necessary. The depositions are strong. Daewon says 2 more weeks. She typed back, How do you know before I do? I pay attention. To the case? A pause. To you. 3 words. They traveled from her phone screen straight into the locked room in her chest and turned the key. She typed, That's either the most reassuring or the most terrifying thing anyone's ever said to me. His response, I know. Both are true. She stared at those 5 words for a very long time. The moment that fractured everything happened on Thursday. Zuri was at Daewon's office reviewing deposition transcripts when Daewon set down her pen and took off her glasses. There's something you should know about Sejin, about why he was at Linden and Ash that night. Zuri's stomach dropped. He didn't find the restaurant by accident, Zuri. He goes there every year. Same week, same booth. He's been doing it for 14 years. Why? Daewon's voice softened, the kind of soft that precedes a blow. His mother worked there. The room tilted. 22 years ago, before Victor, before the Michelin stars, when it was still a small bistro called Marlowe's on the same property, his mother was a dishwasher. She'd been in the country for 3 years, no English, working doubles so she could send money home to Seoul for her son's school fees. Zuri's hands went flat on the table, the gesture she made when she was holding herself together. The owner at the time, a man named Gerald Marlowe, treated her the way Victor treated you. Grabbed her, humiliated her, made her feel invisible. She never reported it. She couldn't. She had no papers, no protection, no voice. Daewon paused. She worked there for 2 more years, saved enough to bring Se-yeon over. He was 11 when he arrived. By the time he was 13, his mother was diagnosed with stomach cancer from years of stress and chemical exposure in industrial kitchens. She died when he was 15. Silence, the kind with teeth. He built everything after that, the entire empire, every dollar, every connection, every ounce of power. He built it so that no one could ever do to the people he loved what Gerald Marlowe did to his mother. Zuri's chest ached, a physical, specific ache in the center of her ribs. He goes back to that location every November because that's the month she died. He sits in the corner and he eats a meal she never could have afforded, and he remembers. Daewon looked at her with the particular gentleness of someone delivering a grenade disguised as a gift. And this year, while he was sitting there, remembering his mother being humiliated in that exact building, he watched Victor Kessler grab your hair at the counter. A black woman, in the same space, being treated the same way. Zuri couldn't breathe. He didn't intervene because he's attracted to you, Zuri. He intervened because watching it happen again in the same place to someone who carried herself the way his mother should have been allowed to, it broke something in him that was already cracked. Daewon's voice dropped. The attraction came later, and it's real. I've known that man for 14 years, and I have never seen him behave the way he behaves when your name comes up. But you deserve to know where it started. She didn't call him for 12 days. 12 days of replaying every moment. The USB drive, the bourbon, the way he stood when she entered her room. Was any of it for her? Or was she standing in the light of a dead woman's shadow? Nadia sat on her couch with takeout and said the one thing Zuri didn't want to hear. Both things are true. He can be there for his mother and catch feelings for you. Those aren't opposites. On the 13th morning, Zuri drove to Linden and Ash. The restaurant was closed. Victor's lease had not been renewed. His Michelin stars couldn't save a building someone else owned. Someone who had bought the property 3 years ago under a holding company, not for revenge, for correction. She parked, walked to the back entrance. The kitchen door was unlocked. He was inside, standing in the empty kitchen. No suit, just dark clothes and the stillness that meant he wasn't guarding himself. You should have told me. Yes. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid that if you knew it started with her, you'd think it was only about her. He stepped closer. My mother never got to fight back, Zuri. I just watched her put her head down and keep washing dishes. I was 11. I watched through the kitchen door. His voice cracked. Barely. When I saw Victor do that to you, Zuri, I didn't see my mother. I saw what she could have been if anyone had stood beside her. He stopped. You're not her ghost. You're her answer. She stepped forward, took his hands. Both. I'm not staying because of what you owe her memory. I'm staying because of who you are, separate from that. I know. See me, not a correction. Me. He looked at her, unguarded. I see you. I have seen you since the moment you picked up that pen. He earned it. Add emotions make the story very interesting. Not with grand gestures alone, though there were those. A security detail she didn't notice for 3 weeks until Nadia pointed out that the same black car was always 1 block away. A first edition copy of a culinary textbook she'd mentioned wanting to study. The way he showed up outside the courthouse the morning Victor's case went to trial. Not to walk her in, just to be visible on the sidewalk in case the system tried to swallow her again. He earned it in smaller ways, by asking questions and waiting for the full answer, by not flinching when she pushed back on a decision, by learning, slowly and visibly, that protecting her and controlling her were not the same thing, and choosing the former every single time. The case concluded on a Tuesday. Victor Kessler was found liable. The settlement was significant and private. The footage played on national news. 3 of the ownership group's board members resigned within a month. The 2 women Daewon found gave interviews that broke open a decade of silence. Zuri watched the verdict from the plaintiff's table with her hands flat and her face composed, and her cousin Imani squeezing her shoulder hard enough to leave a mark. It wasn't everything. One case and one restaurant doesn't fix what it represents. But it was real, and it was documented, and it was hers. He was across the street at a coffee shop when she walked out, phone in hand, looking through the glass. She crossed 4 lanes of traffic to reach him. "You did it," he said. "We did it. Don't be modest, it's the least interesting thing about you." Something crossed his face, warm and surprised, and quickly managed, like he wasn't accustomed to being teased. It changed him, made him look like someone who knew how to be happy but forgot. "Dinner," she said. "Not tonight. Not a thank you. Something I want." He was quiet. Then, yes. 6 months later, Zuri stood in the kitchen of a restaurant that used to be called Linden and Ash. It had a new name now. Aster, named after the wildflower that grows in places most plants give up on. She was head chef. Not because a powerful man handed it to her, because Daewon's settlement included a clause Zuri wrote herself, first right of refusal on the lease for the Greenwich property. She'd spent 4 months building a business plan, securing investors, some connected to Seojin, most not, and designing a menu that reflected every kitchen she'd ever survived. Opening night. The dining room was full. Imani was managing the floor. Nadia was at the bar telling every customer the chef was her best friend. Zuri's mother had flown up from Bridgeport and was sitting at table 1, critiquing the jollof rice under her breath while beaming so hard her face hurt. Seojin was in the corner booth. Same bourbon, different everything. After service, when the kitchen was clean and the staff had gone home and the building held that particular silence that Zuri loved, the quiet of a space that has held joy for hours and is still warm from it, she sat across from him. He looked at her, the full weight of it, every unguarded thing. "Your mother," Zuri said. "This was her kitchen." "Yes." "And now it's mine." "Yes." She reached across the table, took his hand. "I'm going to make it a place where no one ever feels invisible. You understand that? I'm counting on it." She traced her thumb across his knuckles, the hands that had done things she didn't ask about, the hands that had held hers carefully like she was worth being gentle with. "You know this isn't simple," she said. "What you do, what you are." "I know." "I won't look away." "I don't want you to." She held his gaze, the current between them. Months of it, built in parking lots and phone calls, and 12 silent days, and a kitchen where 2 women, decades apart, had been told they didn't belong. "Then stay," she said. He turned his hand in hers, lifted her fingers to his mouth, pressed his lips against her knuckles. Brief, certain, devastating. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. Outside, Greenwich held its cold, quiet evening. Inside, 2 coffee cups sat on the counter, one black, one with too much cream. Still warm, like they'd been waiting. If this story reached into your chest and touched something you keep protected, a memory, a wound, a moment when someone made you feel invisible and you chose to stand anyway, then you know why Tales by Wave exists. This channel isn't content, it's a mirror. Stories like this only survive if people like you refuse to be silent. Subscribe, share, send this to someone who needs to hear that their dignity is not for sale. Not for me, for every Zuri, for every mother who washed dishes in silence so her children could eat. But what Zuri didn't know that night, what she wouldn't discover for another 3 weeks, was that Victor Kessler had not disappeared. He'd been making phone calls to people even Kang Seo-jin had reason to fear, and the first call he made was to a man in Seoul who had been waiting 11 years for an excuse to come to New York. Not for business, for blood.